I simply cannot find her.
Maria?
She's missing from the Abbey again.
Perhaps we should have put a cowbell around her neck.
I have looked everywhere, in all of the usual places.
Picture this. It's 1964. You're standing on a film set in Salzburg, Austria. The cameras are rolling. The lighting crew is doing everything right. The actors are in position. And then, out of nowhere, a sound erupts from the equipment that stops everything cold. Not an explosion. Not a technical failure. Something far more embarrassing. And it happened not once, not twice, but over and over again, right in the middle of one of the most romantic scenes ever put to film. The entire cast collapsed into laughter. Crew members were wiping tears from their eyes. Thousands of dollars evaporated with every failed take, and when it was all over, the studio made everyone swear to silence. For 30 years, nobody talked. But that's just the beginning of what they buried. Because behind the most beloved family musical in Hollywood history is a story full of secrets, bad contracts, near drownings, a drunken lead actor, a helicopter that kept slamming the star into the ground, and one of the pettiest snubs in Oscar history that somehow turned into the sweetest revenge ever witnessed on live television. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on everything they didn't want you to know about. The Sound of Music. Before we go any further, if you love untold Hollywood stories like this one, hit that like button right now, subscribe so you never miss one, and drop a comment below telling us, did you grow up watching The Sound of Music? We genuinely want to know. Now, let's get into it. Most people assume The Sound of Music was always destined for Hollywood. But the truth is, the journey to that 1965 film was messy, complicated, and nearly didn't happen at all. It started in post-war Europe. In 1956, a German filmmaker named Wolfgang Liebeneiner released a modest, heartfelt film about a musical Austrian family who fled Nazi occupation. It was called Die Trap, Family, and it was followed quickly by a sequel. These weren't slick productions. They were quiet, sincere, and deeply sentimental. Exactly what a war-scarred European audience needed. And audiences responded. Both films became the biggest commercial hits West Germany had seen at the time. The story traveled across borders, found audiences in South America, and carried a message that people everywhere seemed to need. That love and music could outlast even the darkest political regimes. But when these films were screened for American studios, the reaction was lukewarm at best. Hollywood executives saw clunky pacing and old-fashioned sentimentality. Nobody was rushing to acquire the rights. Then a Broadway director named Vincent J. Dunhue watched the German films, and instead of seeing the flaws, he saw the bones. He looked past the low budget and unpolished style and recognized something underneath, a story with genuine emotional power. And he had a vision that nobody else had considered. Don't make it a film, he reportedly said. Make it a Broadway musical, and build it around Mary Martin. That single idea lit the fuse. But here's something that doesn't get talked about enough. Before Broadway or Hollywood could do anything, someone had to own the rights. And the woman at the center of the story had already made a deal that would cost her dearly. Maria von Trapp was not a businesswoman. She was a former nun who had married a widowed naval officer, helped raise 7 children, built a singing career with her family, and then fled her homeland with almost nothing. By the early 1950s, she was simply trying to keep her family afloat. So when German producers approached her about turning her memoir, The Story of the Trapp Family Singers, into a film, she agreed. The price? $9,000. One payment. No royalties. No ongoing rights. Just a flat sum and a handshake. To understand how significant that decision turned out to be, consider what would come after. A Broadway musical that generated hundreds of millions in ticket sales, a Hollywood film that broke global box office records, and decades of merchandise, recordings, and reruns. Maria von Trapp saw essentially none of it. When Hollywood later came knocking, hoping to cherry-pick elements of her story without properly licensing it, Maria actually pushed back. She insisted the story be told completely and truthfully. She had integrity, even if she'd been poorly served by her original deal. Meanwhile, Broadway producers Mary Martin and her husband Richard Halliday were desperately trying to reach Maria to discuss a stage adaptation. There was only one problem. She was unreachable. Literally, Maria was deep in the jungles of Papua New Guinea, doing missionary work alongside the family's longtime musical director, Father Franz Wasner. No phones, no reliable mail service, letters piled up at remote mission posts, and Maria, focused entirely on serving isolated communities, tore them up without reading them. It wasn't until Maria and Father Wasner returned to the United States by ship, docking in San Francisco, that Halliday finally caught up with her. He was waiting at the pier. He handed her tickets to see Mary Martin perform. Maria went. She was moved. And even after explaining the complicated rights situation with the German studio, she gave the couple her informal blessing to pursue it. That casual go-ahead would set the wheels turning on one of the most lucrative stage productions in history. Early in the development of the stage musical, the producers had a conservative plan: mix a handful of authentic Austrian folk songs with just a couple of new compositions to stitch the narrative together. Keep it grounded. Keep it European. To write those few songs, they approached Richard Rodgers and Oscar Hammerstein, the most celebrated songwriting duo in Broadway history, responsible for Oklahoma, Carousel, and South Pacific. Rodgers and Hammerstein's response was essentially all or nothing. They weren't interested in fitting their work around pre-existing folk songs. That wasn't how they created. They wanted total creative control, or they'd walk away entirely. And the producers, after some internal debate, said yes. That decision changed music history, because what Rodgers and Hammerstein delivered wasn't a few serviceable songs. They delivered My Favorite Things, Do, Re, Mi, Climb Every Mountain, 16, Going on 17, and a quiet, intimate number written specifically to give the film's male lead a moment of emotional vulnerability. Edelweiss. Despite what many people assume, Edelweiss is not a traditional Austrian folk song. It was composed by Rodgers and Hammerstein expressly for this production. Over the decades, it has been so thoroughly embraced as an Austrian cultural symbol that even some Austrians have been surprised to learn it wasn't traditional. That's how powerful the song became. The Broadway production opened on November 16, 1959, at the Lunt-Fontanne Theatre. Mary Martin starred as Maria, with Theodore Beichel as the captain. The production ran for 443 performances over nearly 4 years. Advanced ticket sales alone reportedly reached staggering figures before most audiences had even seen a single performance. By the time the curtain fell for the last time in 1963, a bidding war for the film rights was already underway. 20th Century Fox ultimately won, paying what was then a shocking sum for the rights, money that, adjusted for inflation, would represent tens of millions of dollars today. What nobody at Fox could have predicted was just how badly they'd need this film to succeed. 20th Century Fox in the early 1960s was not a studio riding high. It was a studio in freefall. The culprit was Cleopatra, the Elizabeth Taylor epic that became one of the most catastrophic productions in Hollywood history. Budgets spiraled. Filming was plagued with delays, illness, and behind-the-scenes chaos. By the time the film was released, it had gone so far over budget that it nearly bankrupted the entire studio. Executives were fired. Departments were slashed. The whole company was bleeding. So, when Fox poured a significant sum into the rights to a family musical, on top of a production budget that started at over $8 million and would keep climbing, many in the industry thought the studio was making its final mistake. Even as filming began in Salzburg, the financial pressure was relentless. The Austrian location, while visually stunning, turned 1964 into a production nightmare. That year happened to be one of the wettest Salzburg had seen in decades. Rain delays stacked up. What director Robert Wise had planned as a 6-week location shoot stretched to 11 weeks. Hundreds of cast and crew members waited in damp hotels while the budget climbed and climbed. The studio brass watched the spending with genuine dread. Whispers circulated that the Sound of Music might follow Cleopatra off a financial cliff. They could not have been more wrong. But We'll get to that. While Fox was sweating over the budget, the casting process was producing its own drama. Let's start with the role that would define a career and undo a historic injustice. Julie Andrews had spent years on Broadway perfecting the role of Eliza Doolittle in My Fair Lady. Her performance was legendary. Her voice was extraordinary. She was, by almost every measure, the definitive Eliza. But when Warner Brothers decided to adapt the musical for film, they passed on Andrews entirely. Studio executives decided she wasn't what they called camera-ready, meaning they didn't believe she had the screen presence to carry a major film. The role went to Audrey Hepburn, an undeniably iconic actress, but one whose singing voice required extensive dubbing throughout the film. Andrews, the woman who had made the role famous, was left out entirely. It was a professional wound, and it stung. But here's where fate intervened. Director Robert Wise was searching for someone to play Maria von Trapp. He wasn't immediately sold on Andrews. Then someone showed him early footage from a Disney production that hadn't been released yet, Mary Poppins. Wise watched just a few minutes and reportedly turned to a colleague and said something to the effect of, "Sign her before anyone else does." Andrews accepted the role of Maria for a flat fee. No royalties, no profit participation. A single paycheck, and that was it. Fox didn't believe she was a big enough star to deserve a back-end deal. Mary Poppins opened. It was a phenomenon. Julie Andrews won the Academy Award for Best Actress, and in her acceptance speech, she thanked Jack Warner, the very executive who had rejected her for My Fair Lady, publicly, warmly, and with a smile that the entire industry understood perfectly. It was grace and shade, delivered simultaneously. And Hollywood has never forgotten it. Meanwhile, finding the male lead was its own ordeal. Several major actors were considered for the role of Captain Von Trapp, including some of the biggest names of the era. None of them felt right, or they declined outright. Then came Christopher Plummer. Plummer was brilliant, classically trained, precise, commanding. He was also, by his own account, deeply uninterested in the project. He found the material too sweet, too sentimental, and too far from the kind of serious dramatic work he wanted to pursue. His private nickname for the film, which he used openly behind the scenes, was The Sound of Mucus. He turned the role down more than once. Director Robert Wise flew to London specifically to change his mind. Plummer agreed, but only if the character could be deepened, given sharper dialogue and a more emotionally complex arc. He also wanted a song, something that would give the captain an authentic emotional moment rather than just positioning him as a background figure in a children's musical. That conversation led directly to Edelweiss being written for the film version. The song gave Captain Von Trapp a quiet, private moment of connection to his homeland, and it became one of the most memorable moments in the entire picture. The search for the Von Trapp children produced its own unexpected footnotes. Among those who auditioned and were passed over, a young Mia Farrow, who tried out for the role of Liesla multiple times before being turned down. Kurt Russell auditioned as well for one of the younger male roles. Neither got the part, but both went on to careers nobody could have predicted. Now we get to the story the studio buried for decades. The gazebo scene. You know it. The moonlit glass and iron structure. Maria and the captain finally allowing themselves to admit their feelings. A soft, glowing, deeply romantic moment that audiences have described as one of cinema's great love scenes. What audiences didn't know, what they were specifically told not to know, was that filming that scene was a complete disaster. The problem was the lighting equipment. The production was using large carbon arc lights to replicate moonlight, which was standard practice for the era. These machines were industrial and powerful. They were also, under certain conditions, prone to emitting a sound. A very specific sound. A prolonged, wet, flatulent raspberry noise every time Plummer moved close to Andrews for the romantic climax of the scene. The sound. Every take, it happened again. Julie Andrews later described it as Impossible to ignore, a noise that came rumbling up from below precisely at the most dramatically sincere moment. 20 attempts. 2 professional actors trying desperately to hold it together. An entire crew dissolving into helpless laughter around them. Robert Wise eventually made a pragmatic decision. If he couldn't control the lighting or the laughter, he'd remove the faces from the equation entirely. He repositioned the shot so that Maria and the captain were filmed in silhouette against the glowing windows of the gazebo. Faces hidden, expressions invisible. The laughing mouths safely out of frame, and the result? Accidentally gorgeous. The silhouetted shot became one of the most visually distinctive moments in the film. Critics praised its romanticism. Audiences found it deeply moving. Fox clamped down immediately. Cast and crew were warned not to discuss the equipment, failures, the sound, or the multiple ruined takes. The official story was that the scene had been filmed smoothly and deliberately. The truth stayed hidden for decades, until Julie Andrews recounted the whole thing on a talk show, laughing as she described what it was like to attempt a sincere love scene while industrial machinery made sounds that belonged in a different kind of film entirely. The chaos wasn't only comedic. Some moments on set were genuinely frightening. During the boat scene, where the Von Trapp children tumble into a lake, 5-year-old Kim Carruth, who played Little Gretel, came terrifyingly close to drowning. The crew had reportedly informed Julie Andrews just before filming that the child couldn't swim. The plan was for Andrews to be close enough to catch her the moment the boat tipped, but when the boat flipped, Andrews fell the wrong way, away from the child. Kim went under. She surfaced, went under again. Another cast member dove in and pulled her out. She had swallowed enough water to make her sick, and she developed a fear of swimming that reportedly stayed with her for years. Andrews was shaken. She described it as one of the most frightening moments of the entire production. And then there was the opening scene, the one that looks like pure joy. Andrews spinning through an alpine meadow with her arms wide open, the camera sweeping overhead. To capture that aerial shot, a helicopter had to fly low, very low. The downdraft from the rotors was powerful enough that every time it passed, Andrews was knocked flat onto the grass. She got up, reset, smiled, and was immediately knocked down again. This happened repeatedly, by multiple accounts, at least 6 or 7 times. She later joked that she was nearly launched out of Austria. The scene that has come to symbolize freedom and exhilaration was, for the person living it, something closer to a full-contact sport. Christopher Plummer's unhappiness during production wasn't just background gossip. It was a central fact of the shoot. He was in a beautiful city doing a job he didn't respect, surrounded by a cast he liked personally, but a project he found artistically unsatisfying. He drank. He ate well. He later admitted in his memoir that he gained weight and showed up to some scenes not entirely sober. One of those scenes was the festival performance of Edelweiss, the moment in the film where the captain's emotional walls fully crumble, where he holds a note and nearly breaks down in front of a crowd, where audiences have consistently pointed to as proof of the character's profound hickly hast. For Plummer filmed that scene drunk, and it worked. It was beautiful. It moved people. There's another layer to this. The singing voice audiences hear in the captain's musical moments isn't fully Plummer's. Professional vocalist Bill Lee, who also provided vocal work for several Disney productions, handled the more demanding singing passages. Plummer reportedly found this frustrating and felt it undercut his performance. Most viewers never noticed. Lee's voice blended so naturally with Plummer's speaking tone that the transition was seamless. Here's the grace note to all of this. Plummer spent decades dismissing the film, rolling his eyes at questions about it, and treating it as a footnote he'd rather skip. But in later years, particularly in interviews toward the end of his life, he softened. He acknowledged the film's impact. He admitted that it had reached people in ways few things ever do. He called himself lucky, eventually, to have been part of it. It just took about 40 years to get there. When The Sound of Music opened in 1965, the industry held its breath. Fox had gambled enormous resources on a film that could either save the studio or finish it. Within 18 months, the question was answered. The film overtook Gone with the Wind, which had held the top spot in global box office history for nearly 3 decades, to become the highest-grossing film ever made at that point. It earned over $286 million worldwide in actual 1960s dollars. That number, adjusted for modern ticket prices, represents something almost incomprehensible. It won 5 Academy Awards: Best Picture, Best Director, Best Film Editing, Best Sound, and Best Score. Robert Wise, who had already directed West Side Story, became one of the few directors in history to win Best Picture twice. Fox was saved. The studio that had nearly collapsed under the weight of Cleopatra was resurrected by a musical filmed in the rain in Salzburg, and Julie Andrews and Christopher Plummer, both of whom had signed flat contracts with no royalties, watched the phenomenon unfold from the sidelines, having already cashed their one-time checks. The film that defined both of their legacies returned nothing additional to either of them. Here's what's remarkable when you step back and look at the whole picture. The Sound of Music was built on accidents. A woman who sold her life story for $9,000 and barely saw what came after. A director who fled the project. A leading man who hated the script and showed up drunk. A romantic scene salvaged by pointing the camera the other way. A near drowning that could have ended in tragedy. A star who was passed over for one role, only to inherit something far greater. None of it was supposed to work out this way, and yet the film that emerged from all that chaos, doubt, and barely controlled disorder became something that people around the world have carried with them for 60 years. Maybe that's the truest thing about it. The most enduring art rarely comes from perfect conditions. It comes from people doing their best under impossible circumstances, and sometimes getting lucky with what goes wrong. The hills may have been alive, but the set was pure, beautiful chaos. If you made it all the way to the end of this one, thank you. Genuinely. This is the kind of story that deserves to be told, and you helped make that possible just by watching. Hit the like button if this surprised you. Share it with someone who grew up loving this film. They need to know what really happened. Subscribe so you're here for the next deep dive. And leave a comment below. Which part shocked you the most? The gazebo scene? Plummer's confession? Julie Andrews getting knocked flat by a helicopter over and over again? We'll see you in the next one.